All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today we have our special guest today, Kat. And Kat, can you begin by telling me just who you are?
Sure. Yes. Thanks for having me. That's a big question. I am Kat. I founded Profesh, which is my digital marketing agency. I am in Austin, Texas. Um, my biggest focus on life, really, both professionally and personally, is to really add value where I can, which is kind of a big statement. But what I've done is I have found ways in my agency to focus on resources that I can share with other small businesses for free, not gatekeeping, sharing resources where I can, and then finding ways for us all to make more money. That's really my hook is, what can we do for each other? How can we do it? And how can we survive in this post ad AI world? Things are changing so much.
What types of resources do you share?
Yeah, so I put on several different webinars, but right now we're focusing on email lists. So any small businesses out there, I mean, it'll probably make you groan because it's a lot of work, but I help people go into their email lists that already exist and find ways to figure out who your most profitable or most engaged. Maybe they haven't actually bought anything from you, but they're reading every single email you send, they're gobbling up your content. I help you find those people within that list and then reach out to them to see how they're really doing. And I'm not talking like building bots and sending mass emails. I'm talking about finding that top 10% of your most engaged or most profitable people and seeing how their businesses are going, seeing what pain points they might be experiencing. 2024 is a perfect time for this because I feel like the key word is volatility. Everything is up and down, everything is changing constantly. And from that, we go back to the table to brainstorm. We know what this handful of people, what they're struggling with. And we use that information to find what solutions we might be able to provide. And then we use that and say, hey guys, you told us what's hurting. Here are some solutions, some free, some not. And then we also offer those to the wider audience, to that whole mailing list. And what we're seeing is, no surprise, we're talking to humans and humans are telling us their human problems and their businesses. We're seeing that that does apply to these entire mailing lists and it's increasing revenue by, two, three, four, five times just by talking to people, just by asking them. It's a eureka moment of go figure. And then from that, we help build partnerships. So then you can go back to, those most profitable people and say, hey, do you know anybody else that maybe I haven't worked with yet or they're not aware of our service? Can we build some sort of a referral program, a partnership where you put me in contact with them and then let's build something together? Like, let's help them and let's give you a chunk of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's the webinar in a nutshell. I gave you like a 2-minute pitch, but we're providing that formula to small businesses, like actually genuinely for free. There's nothing I hate more than someone telling me, hey, I'm going to give you a freebie, but that's their sales tactic. This is actually a way for us to not gatekeep, to provide the resources. And then we know how time consuming it is. So if you decide not to DIY it and you want to come work with us, that's how I make the money is I say, here's how you can do it. By all means, please, if you can't afford to pay anybody, go for it. And if not, come back to me and then let's talk about how I can help you without taking, any parts of your revenue until you start making money. Like what kind of a partnership can we work out together as well?
Can you give an example of one of your successful partnerships?
Sure. Gosh, I'm going to say the first one that gave me that dopamine hit. We need them as entrepreneurs. You need something to keep you going. One of the first ones I found was my background is in tax and payroll, which is not it's fintech and it's not super sexy. But what I learned was there's something special in the ability to take really complicated topics and help the masses understand them. And, I worked in that industry for 10 years. And that was, when I left, doing a lot of reflection into, what kind of niche am I going to pick if I'm doing marketing, such a big industry. That's what I came up with. I have this special skill that I've developed, and I applied that to building Profesh. And one of my first clients was a doctor, and he was providing specialty services as well for women's healthcare. And he was providing surgeries and specialty consultations for a lot of women that often went underdiagnosed for several different diseases, some of them that I had suffered from. So it was pretty personal. And we partnered and still work together today. It's been years, both with, overhauling his website to make sure the content really found the right audience. Like, how do you find women who are being underdiagnosed and don't know that they have these things? How do you tell them, and how can they find you? So there's this funny problem where you want to speak to them, but you have to really go out and find them without using keywords that they wouldn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. So I helped him do that first. And then for the first time, he had a huge database from being in practice for over a decade, maybe over 2 decades even. Um, a huge database of his clients, a huge email list that just wasn't being used. And so I helped him build, kind of from the ground up, a newsletter that wasn't super pushy. It wasn't really asking for any sales. It was just keeping his prior patients updated on what was going on with the practice, on what was new in the medical field that pertained to them directly. Like, hey, you have these, you know, pretty specialty needs. So let me just make sure you're taking care of yourself, and I'm giving you whatever I can. Um, and I mean, within months, it was a lot of work. So I would say it probably took us 90 days to get everything ready to launch. But within a quarter, so within 3 months from there, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were seeing month over month and year over year huge growth. And then not just that, but for my non-marketing people, there's a lot of internal data that we use to see if an email is successful. And generally, if you can get 30% of the people you send it to open your email, that's really, really good. And so we were seeing well over that 50, 60, 75% on emails. People were getting them and they were opening them. So for me, that alone is really exciting, just that I'm doing my job. But to see the impact that that had directly on this client who, I'd grown really close to is, I mean, it's the best. There's a lot that goes into cheerleading people and, helping them understand their problems. But then when you see their problems kind of dissolve away and you get to participate in those solutions and then you see them make more money, like these are, just families. That was like one of my very first really exciting stories. Kept me going for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. So, what specific problems do you usually address? And what are usually the general solutions that you and your company provide?
Sure. So 9 times out of 10, who I am working with are small businesses who are just kind of out of time in the day. So they've been pretty successful. Maybe you've been um, working for a year, a couple of years, and your schedule is packed. You have clients, you're comfortable, but the next step is to scale, and you just don't have one more minute or one more dollar in your day or in your bank account. And so, I've been there, and it's still a struggle. Scaling takes years, but you know, what do you do when you know you can't stay there forever, even though you're comfortable, good lifestyle, paying your bills, but you know this isn't like a retirement plan. You can do this for a while. What do you do? And those are the people that are my favorite to help. And that's who I really focus on, especially with email marketing, because that's the biggest solution is to say, listen, I know you don't have another dollar for ads. And ads are like more and more every month that goes by, less effective and more expensive. Let's scrap them anyway. I know you probably can't afford a marketing service up front. Those are pretty hefty fees. Why don't we structure an agreement where I take away some of the risk for you and I'll build this with you, and then we'll agree on a revenue share at the end, taking away some of those barriers that we all face and then finding a way for us all to win. And that is my go-to, and especially for these small businesses that are in this like mid-stage success, but a very unclear future and how to get there.
Why did you choose this specific career and industry? And what were your motives for doing it?
Oh, well, I there's this practice. It's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese practice that I came across reading a book years ago, and it really stuck with me. And it's all about exploring, um, what you're good at. Well, really, what your passion is. What keeps you going. Um, what the world needs, and then you start thinking about what you're good at, and then what can you actually get paid for. And it really resonated with me. It was all about the Japanese culture. They have the oldest workforce because there's so large a percentage of the population that is just happy to keep working. Like their retirement age, they have retirement benefits, but they're cool. They're enjoying it, which is just not something I can identify with, especially at that time. And that's the practice that they explain. Uh, After COVID, so I was working in corporate for about 10 years after grad school, and I was in a leadership position. And I would say, 2020 and 2021 were a blur for all of us. I was too busy to even think about, what I'm going to have for dinner, let alone, what do I want in life. And once that dust slowly started to settle, I realized how burnt out I was, how underpaid I was, and just how generally unhappy I had become. I started digging back into that and just really thinking about all of those things. Those are big questions. Who am I to say what the world needs? But really focusing on, okay, well, then what would make me happy and I'm good at and I can get paid for? Um, and it actually started out as writing. In my undergrad, I studied government and English, and I started thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to be a writer, what does that mean? Am I going to write books? Am I going to write for other people? And I just started playing around with that avenue and ended up copywriting on the side. Just started a side hustle, copywriting for different businesses. And then that's slowly what became Profesh when I started really focusing on copywriting, writing web pages. The doctor I mentioned before, he was one of my earlier clients where I was writing blogs for him just on the side, developing some relationships. And then about a year of that and getting some word of mouth clients slowly, um, it was a really nice culmination of, um, wow, I'm making money doing this. Not life changing money, but slowly I was seeing it grow and realizing I might be able to, at least match my salary doing this. And at the same time, that burnout, as it does, going unaddressed, continued to grow. I think it was a quarterly review or a raise or something very corporate that just pissed me off. Like I had hit my line and that was it. Whatever it was, I left on good terms and certainly don't recommend letting yourself get to that line because it's not really fun and it's not the best way, but that's what happened. And kind of trial by fire after that, I had left my job. I was very lucky that I have a husband who has a full-time job, has health insurance. I didn't have to worry about a lot of things like that many of us do. And after that, it just evolved and evolved and evolved. It became I don't know if you've seen the movie with Jim Carrey, Yes Man, where he's just, he joins some sort of a cult. And they say, like, your job in your very unhappy life is to start saying yes to everything. Like, you're not allowed to say no. And, it becomes a mess for him, of course, but he has a lot of adventures and he meets people he never would have met and he's not a hermit anymore. And it was a lot like that. I was out finding clients and networking and getting word of mouth referrals, and whatever they needed, I said yes to. Like, oh, you need a ghostwriter? Yep, I got you. Oh, you need an editor? Yep, I'm here. You need some website design? Got it. It was all on the fly. And then that helped me really find my niche. What am I actually enjoying? There's enough demand for, and I can get paid for it. And building on that is what brought me to today, and hopefully will continue to carry me uh, on to the next phase.
So you mentioned a lot of different things. I think the main question I have now is how did this Japanese concept that you mentioned called Ikigai, how did this sort of apply to your passion with writing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I am learning more and more about that actually. It was one of those things I was always good at, you know, heavy on the English classes. My government degree was um, actually really focused on political philosophy. So it's a lot of Socrates and Aristotle and John Locke and a lot of heavy research, heavy writing, all kind of went hand in hand. And it just came naturally for me. And I really enjoyed it. So I knew I was good at it and I knew I didn't have to try very hard at it, as a natural skill. But I'm learning now, even more as I grow in my career, that it's the appreciation for the power of words. There's just so much you can do as a communicator, but also, you know, with marketing, let's say your message is everything. And I can't tell you how many emails I unsubscribe from because they're poorly written and they're not written to me. I don't know who think they're emailing, but I'm not your audience. So there's power in that, getting your message to the right people in the right way. But it also has real power for change. I mean, that's been one of the really cool things is working with people that have projects that they don't know how to get off the ground. I've helped a few politicians write books, like I've ghostwritten for them and edited for them. And it's a different kind of impact where you don't necessarily have to be running for office, for example, but you can help get these really important, impactful messages out there and meet some interesting people along the way. And I think that's the common thread that has just grown stronger as I've moved deeper and deeper into this entrepreneur life and worried a little bit because it is something that I love so much. Once you commoditize it and demand it to pay your rent or your mortgage, that can be scary because you don't want to start hating it. I think that's because there's so much value behind it and there's so much potential for the good that the right words can do. It's remained interesting and, magical to me. It's another good book, actually, Big Magic by, oh my gosh, what's her name? Elizabeth. Oh my gosh, I cannot remember her last name. She's the writer of Eat, Pray, Love. She writes about that, about keeping that big magic. If you're a writer or a creative, it can be really, really easy to demand value from it. And then you kind of ruin that magic. And so, that was a fear of mine. And so far I've been able to keep it safe and, pay my mortgage with it, which is lovely.
It's fascinating that you said that because that's actually happening a lot now in the entertainment industry in a lot of
Mm.
different areas.
Like their own projects, like demanding things from it, or
Well, it's the big magic thing you mentioned about how sort of the quality is beginning to dip, if you notice, with a lot of movies and a lot of content nowadays.
yeah. That makes sense. Like the commercialization of it, it's losing its
Hmm.
charm. It's so funny you say that. I feel like I don't know who put it out, but I did see an article about Disney specifically. Like, is Disney losing its magic and losing its touch a bit, especially with all these like recreations? And that's such a good example. And it sounds kind of silly at first, but actually, I mean, nothing rings more true than that. These things that we hold so close to us as children, and then rewatching The Lion King, that recreation, it just had no soul. There was nothing there. I totally get that. It's so true.
Are you a massive Disney fan?
I mean, of the classics for sure. I am a really big Marvels fan. Love Marvels. Um, that was a COVID discovery I found about myself. I never knew that there was just so much available and so much time, that I got really, really into the Marvels franchise and all the shows, all the movies, seen them. It's embarrassing to admit how many times I've seen them all. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a fan of them too. I've looked at a few of them. I do think a lot of writers and creatives like yourself might gain influence from them. Am I wrong or
No, for sure. I think it's really similar. I'm really into Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. I really, really like Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power. And I think what is common in all of those is the world building. Again, it goes back to the power that your words have, the power of the pen to build something new and big. I totally agree. Like, it makes sense why I would identify with all of those.
how do you incorporate world building into your entrepreneurship and career?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is specific even to my industry. I think when you're working as a service, B2B or directly with individuals, it's all about storytelling, which is really heavy in marketing. Like, what is the story? Looking at data, like, okay, what story is this telling? It makes it more accessible if you can understand what you're looking at or what the problem is. What story are we telling? And what story do we want to keep telling? What are we overcoming? We have to be able to communicate that to ourselves and to each other and these partnerships. I think that's the big thing is, okay, if I don't understand one, my own story and where I'm going, um, how can I expect anyone else to? And that's huge. I mean, huge for marketing, but huge for developing relationships with your clients and building trust and being able to, confidently tell them and believe yourself, like, okay, I'm going to get you where you need to go. Like, that's really, really step one is, you know, knowing what that is.
So, what would you consider step two then?
Oh my gosh. I would say step two, let's say step one is understanding the story. I'll say if I have a client and onboarding, that's really like the takeaway I want is I would need to make sure we're a good fit and I need to make sure that I understand your story and where you want to go. Step two from that would be, okay, let's put together a plan. Like, what are our goals? What's reasonable? Basically it comes with a lot more questions. Like, okay, now we have a million other things to answer, to make sure we're aligning with that. Um, and then, figuring out how to get there. So, what are the goals? How long will they take? What can we do to get there? And then making sure we're aligned. It's really tricky, this line that I have to walk. And I think a lot of coaches would agree with this, where, you know, you are a cheerleader and trying to encourage and really show value to your clients and to their brands and, hype them up like, yeah, we can get there, we can get there. But then you also don't want to overpromise because there's a lot of learnings along the way. Like, sure, we can implement these strategies and let's do that quickly. And then let's just bake in the understanding that some of these might fail. And that's okay. That's part of the journey. So also preparing them for that so that there isn't, you know, a lot of emotions and frustrations. And we need to set those expectations early. And then I would say following all of that, it's a lot of execution and iterating. That's what it is from now until forever, until we have reached our goals and our milestones, and then set new goals and new milestones. It's kind of a rinse and repeat after that, while also maintaining what works. Making sure if you find the magic bullet for getting people to open your emails and to buy something from you, to spend some sort of money, like let's make sure we protect that and keep doing that while we, push forward.
Hmm. What is the magic bullet?
It'll be different for everybody. I would say the thing that's the same is how we measure it. So let's say you have a revenue goal and we outline, here's your revenue goal, and we want to make sure that we're hitting that after all of your expenses, after you pay me, after you pay all of your employees, after you're paying all of your bills, your website, any memberships, all your business costs. You want to hit a certain amount. And then we kind of work backwards from that. So I think the thing that would be the same is that you're agreeing on certain metrics. If storytelling is the overarching thing, data is everything else. Making sure you understand how you're going to measure this and then sticking with those measurements so that you can always compare in the future. Like, okay, I know last quarter this is what the number was versus the quarter following. That's going to be the key. I would say trying to find some specifics, using the open rates, for example, like a 30% open rate is fantastic. Finding things like that align with your brand and making sure that we're tracking them, weekly and then monthly and then quarterly. So then we can look long term annually at how we're doing and compare. Those are going to be the things that apply to everyone. That's what I have to use. And it helps me forcing function most of the time to hold myself accountable to how I'm doing. I think the other tricky part is when you're comfortable, it's easy to not push ahead. Whenever you have enough clients, whenever you are bringing in enough to pay your bills and feeling okay, that's the sweet poison because it's going to being comfortable really like keep you from forging ahead on those goals. And that data really does keep you accountable. Once you set it, it's easy to see like, okay, I got 3 months left in the year and I'm 75% away from my goal. Like, where did I go wrong and what can I do now? Right.
So, how do you measure data? Like, what metrics do you look for, etc.?
Yeah. So a lot of times clients will come to us with what they want. Like they'll have their own KPIs, so key performance indicators. For example, for me, what I like to do is if I'm looking at, let's just keep it with emails, there's several different things. So you'll send out, let's say you have 100 people that you're sending an email to, and the email itself is asking you to click a link, and when you click it, it's going to take you to a video that I want you to watch. Maybe that's because it's on YouTube and you've monetized YouTube, or maybe it's a video that's, I had a client that was talking about how he provides a guided meditation masterclass. So he wasn't sure what he should give away for free. Like, should he give away the entire class for free in order to get people to then buy a larger course? Should he give away like a video a day or a week? So there's a lot of different asks that you can put in there. But let's just say you're asking them to click a link to go watch a video on YouTube. So what I would do is ahead of time, I would decide what my numbers are, but the categories are generally the same. So I would send the email. I like to check my data pretty often because I just get anxious and ready to see what's going on, but you do want to give it some time. I usually check it after a day, and then I'm checking it daily, but then I look back after about 4 days just to let people see their emails. So then you want to see, one, how many people opened it at all. Out of those 100, if 30 did, great. If 50 did, amazing. Um, and then you want to see it's called a click through rate. So you want to see if they clicked through the flow you wanted them to click through and see what that percentage is. And then that will take you to YouTube. And then you can go and see, okay, how many people from this specific link came to my YouTube video? Did it get me a return that I'm happy with? And that usually is, depends on the business and what they're looking for. 100 versus 1,000, those percentages will change. But those are the sorts of things that are usually always lumped together to figure out if the email is successful. And then, of course, there'll be things like unsubscribe rates. So if I sent this email and then I saw 50 people unsubscribed and they don't want my emails anymore, I probably made some people a little upset. Let's figure out what happened. And then more just specifics, there's bounce rates. So how many of these emails bounce back to me? That means my data is probably a little outdated. So I need to take care of my email list and keep it fresh. And then there's things like how many of my emails went to spam, like it didn't even make it, in which case that's a me problem. I need to figure out like what I need to do with my email provider and making sure that Google, Outlook, that they're not marking me as a spammer or a bot. So there's things in the back end you can do for that. But all of those things kind of together help you figure out if it was successful or not, apart from how much revenue you brought in. So there's the revenue and then there's all those other things behind the scenes.
So you've actually made clients or audience members upset?
I mean, I haven't, not yet, knock on wood, but it happens a lot. It's not always the way you think. It's not going to necessarily be that they're replying with something angry. It's more so that you are sending emails to people that don't really want your emails. It'd be, like you're sending emails about, college basketball to a group that couldn't care less about college basketball. And they're getting an email every single week about this and they're annoyed. So they're going to unsubscribe. Um, I have noticed too, typically people don't unsubscribe the first time. They tend to ignore it or mark it as spam or, whatever. It takes a couple of times. But once it does, you don't want to see 50 out of your 100 people subscribe because then you got to do a lot of digging to figure out, you know, is my list totally off? I have to go back to the drawing board and figure out like what have I done? Where did this start? A handful is normal, but so it's not necessarily that you've upset them, but it is upsetting number to see. And also goes hand in hand with another metric. If 30% is a good open rate, that's wonderful. But then let's say you're sending an email once a week and you have a group of people that haven't opened your last 3 emails, or maybe they've never opened one of your emails. That's another question you have to start asking, like, okay, how do I handle this? Do I reach out to them directly and say, like, hey, I noticed you haven't opened any of my emails? Feel free to unsubscribe if this isn't for you. Or, is there something else that I can offer you that isn't being offered? Like, I love your feedback. That's something that I don't think enough of us as business owners do and can be really refreshing to hear. Like, me as a human, if I got an email like that, I would be impressed. Like, thanks for paying attention. No, unsubscribe me. Or, no, actually, yes, I have these other questions and you haven't touched on them. What do you think? Like, those personal touches can be a really nice way to respond to some of those issues.
How important is engagement to you and your business?
Yeah, it's interesting because engagement in your email lists, I think, is huge. It's everything. It's not worth your time to be spending, hours on drafting the right emails for them to not work, to be putting together, it's not even just about copy. Oftentimes it's, what are we offering? Is it a discount? Is it a new service? And you can't learn much about those things that take a lot of prep, a lot of financial planning. There's a lot of things that can go on behind the scenes for a lot of businesses when they're deciding on this, right? So if you spend all these resources figuring these things out and then have no engagement, I mean, what a waste of time. And I've learned nothing about any of it. But then outside of that, I would say it is really interesting thinking about engagement on socials, for example. It's so different than when we're talking specifically about email marketing, but a lot of us lump all of those together, like ads, social channels, email marketing. We kind of think about it all in the same bucket, and it's really not. The example I've been using lately is if you think about 100 people, that doesn't feel like a lot on Instagram. Like, oh, I have 100 followers or 100 views on my reel. Like that can be, it feels kind of low, right? Low engagement. Um, but if you think about standing in front of 100 people, that's really different, right? Like I would have stage fright, I think, at first, talking in front of 100 people. Um, and so when we think about engagement, it is really interesting to think about how our social channels have distorted our perception about what's possible and what's meaningful a little bit. And it really is, per channel makes all the difference. And it is actually for me personally, outside of, working around AI and working around Google ads and how expensive they become and inaccessible they become. Like outside of all of that, it's one of the things I like the most about email marketing and why I focus on it so much is because that engagement feels so much more personal. And, um, I don't need 10,000 followers to make a big difference in my client's revenue.
How do you incorporate AI into your business?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I actually think it's a pretty nice tool. I pay for the Chat GPT premium. I really, really like it. I think it's a good and helpful tool when I'm trying to find really good keywords or writing really catchy headlines and landing page, subheadings, and helps me optimize that copy and it saves a lot of time. What I don't use it for is creating any sort of bot or sending out mass emails, drafting copy to send to thousands of people. I mean, it can do that, obviously. It's just not really in my model what I recommend because, sure, it's wonderful time savings to be able to do that, to, blast off an email that will apply to everybody. But it actually, you know, doesn't help you very much if you're not segmenting your audiences properly. Like if you have something that you think applies to, you know, 10,000 people, let's say, I'm going to send this one email to all of them. For some things like a product, that might work. If I have subscribed to a Sephora makeup line of some kind and they want to blast out a sale, hell yeah, that's great. That will work. But if you're trying to build something from the ground up and trying to really like cultivate high value clients, it's a much slower build because you need those personal touches where I say, okay, I'm going to segment these out to these 25 people I know based on what I know about them or how I've worked with them in the past. I know this offer over here or this service will really, really apply. And maybe that wouldn't apply to a smaller business or a solopreneur rather than like a B2B service. Um, so that's where it's a little different and kind of a choose your own adventure situation. But that's how I've decided to use it and certainly makes me less fearful of what's to come. A lot of people have this AI fear, and I don't really have that, at least for my business. Like, I haven't relied on it too much, and it can't replace me. It won't be able to replace a human, at least for me.
How do you balance the personal touch with the AI?
Yeah, it is a funny balance, isn't it? Because your time is valuable. And if it can save you time, great. So for me, it's a good starting point for almost anything. It's also certainly for me as an entrepreneur helped me learn a lot more quickly, finding answers and solutions to things. Like I build my own website and I'm not a developer. So when I have a glitch, I can go, search chat GPT instead of having to hire someone to fix whatever this is. So, on a personal note, there's that. But then when it comes to actually, creating content, creating things, I'll use Instagram as an example. I'm not using AI to generate the image. It's so obvious when people do that. Maybe someday it won't be, and I'll jump on that wagon. Like, sure, let's ask AI to generate whatever this image is. Um, but I do use it to help me write a really catchy title, a really catchy caption to go along with it, and my hashtags. It's a very good data machine. If you think about it as just scraping the internet, like, hey, help me give me the 10 hashtags that are trending right now for this industry or for this type of post. Those are some real time savers because it'll help me get it right. Maybe not the first time, but it'll help me get it right. Certainly not the sixth or seventh time if I was doing that myself, trying to scout out the perfect hashtags. So I have found that really helpful for me and for the work that I do for my clients. And then for just actual content, if I know what I want to say, I know what the topic is. I haven't put an outline together just yet. That I find it really helpful. I can throw in like, hey, this is what I want to say. Here's the topic, and here's the keywords I want to use. Give me an outline. It's a very, very good starting point. And sometimes even blogs, it can write some really, really good blogs that are great for SEO, for your search engine optimization on your website. But it's still, I mean, it needs a one over to really read it and make sure it doesn't sound crazy and that it hasn't said anything that's untrue because it definitely throws in some things that are not true. So it's not there yet. It's not imperfect, but a very good tool for kind of direction and saving some time.
What other tools do you use for direction and saving time besides AI and ChatGPT?
Um, some things I really like that can be handy for a lot of us are it's the same kind of idea as, Chat GPT and these other copy bots. You can use different scrapers, because that's what ChatGPT is doing, right? It's scraping the internet for the information and then putting it all together for you in a way that makes sense. Hunter.io is a really handy one. It's been around for quite a while and it's a really helpful tool when you're looking for a specific contact. Let's say you're trying to get in touch with the head of marketing at some company. One, you can plug in the company and who you're looking for, and it might just spit out exactly the email address, which is great. If it doesn't do that, it does help you gauge what their email format is. If it's, your first dot last name at, profesh.com, it'll tell you that so that then you can go find the name of the person on LinkedIn or whatever and put, cat.valverde at profesh.com and get through to them. I've seen really, really great success. And that's very helpful if you don't want to pay for LinkedIn Sales Navigator or these pretty expensive memberships. It saves a lot of time. And then, I know a lot of people pay for leads when they're looking for new clients. And there can be some wins in that. There's a company called Lead Scraper, and you can download it's for your desktop and plug in a city and an industry, and it'll scrape the internet for the company, for who their website host is, if they're using certain marketing, if they're paying for ads somewhere. It can be really, really helpful to get information that's public, but I would never be able to find it on my own. at a much higher level. And they're pretty cheap services. I know they both have free versions, but I like them so much. I actually pay for both of those, both of their like lower tiered options. And that has helped me a lot whenever I am trying to like find really targeted audiences, or maybe I just want to test something out. But I maybe don't want to test it out on my current clients. I want to test it out on some newbies. It's a really good way to do that too.
How crucial is it to find your target audience?
I mean, gosh, it's everything. It's one of those things for anybody listening that has paid for ads in the past. It's really similar to that process where when you're creating an ad, you don't get it right the first time, certainly, but you're really trying to think, okay, who is this for? Um, who's going to see this? Who do I want to see this, first of all? Where are they at? Are they on YouTube? Are they on Instagram? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they following a certain blog? Are they at networking events? Maybe they're not even, um, maybe it's not even on platform. Are they on LinkedIn? Where are they? And what do I want to say? Like, what's my hook to actually get them to work with me or buy something from me? It's the exact same thing, except you're not paying for an ad. So figuring out who your people are, like who is your audience, where are they, and what can I offer them that would be tempting enough that they are willing to give me their email address to get it. If I'm a baker and I'm offering them a free recipe book that you can download, where can I go to tell other bakers that I have this? And they'll want it enough that they'll say, cool, yeah, here's my email, send it to me. Um, so that's really going to be everything. If that same baker went in to the group that was actually meant for college basketball, it's very unlikely that she'll get many email addresses from them because they might not be interested. Like, they're not bakers, right? So it is truly everything. It's nice with email marketing or even, social posts, anything that doesn't cost you money. It is nice that you can play around a bit and figure it out because it takes some time. Your time is still valuable, of course, like it's still going to take time, but at least, unlike paying for ads, you're not wasting money every single day while you're figuring that out and really honing in on what works, who your audience is, and how to really engage them in the way that gives you a return.
Excellent. So, after closing off with, target audiences and those things, thank you again for being on the show. And I'm just curious, are there any final or closing words you'd like to give to the audience before I let you off here today?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is great. Um, I would say the number one takeaway is, you know, if you don't have the capital and you don't have the time, don't get discouraged. Like, there are options. Like, go out and find the options. I'm one of them. I'm sure there's other people just like me doing the same thing. So go find those resources. Um, if you are interested in learning more, hit me up on LinkedIn. I reply to all my DMs. I'm happy to chat. But also go to emailrevamp.com and sign up for the waitlist. The webinar, I'm recording a new one tomorrow with some updated information. You'll get an email with a link to that really quickly. And I promise, when I say I'm not selling anything, I'm genuinely not. Like, this is actually free. You're not going to see a gimmick. It's genuinely a recipe for how you can do this tomorrow, like very actionable steps. And then if you do want to work with me, then, we can chat from there. That same link has a calendar that you can sign up to chat with me for a little bit, and I'm happy to help.
All right. Thank you again for being on the show, and thank you all for watching the show. I will see you next time on the Jimbo edition. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you.